Hi, and thanks for joining me today on this extra bite-sized CPD session. And this is all about getting your head and SLT on side. So hopefully you will have already got a few ideas of how to do this, but otherwise, hopefully you will get a few ideas by the end of it. So I'm just going to set my timer for 20 minutes so I don't overrun by too much. And also, if a cat suddenly jumps on me, don't be alarmed. He's just jumping off the windowsill. So he comes and visits me quite a lot in the office. So welcome, and let's get going. Okay, so first of all, then, just nice to meet you. A few things about me in case you haven't met me already. I'm sure some of you have. Just in the news this week, I was very excited to get winner of the Bitesize Small Business Sunday on over on Twitter. So that means I get a network, I think about 4,000 people, and extra support from Theo Peters and his companies. So that was quite exciting. And in book news, I've also got a deal with another educational company because Hinton House actually liquidated. So I've been in talks with other publishing houses, and I've got one that's willing to take on my book, which is fabulous. Just waiting to sign the documents. So watch this space for that one. Okay, so my aim really is to do a pincer effect, like a lobster, top down and bottom up approach when it comes to school and teacher wellbeing, because as well as supporting Senkos, I do sort of try and support wider teacher community as well. So ideally supporting organisations, head teachers, etc., in order to create a top down approach, and also a bottom up approach with individuals and school staff, and really empowering people to make their own choices, really, because there's always a choice. It's not always a difficult choice. It's normally not black and white. There's lots of shades of grey, but there is always a choice to make. So it can be a little bit difficult sometimes to make those hard choices. And of course, I want to support schools and individuals in advocating for mental health, SEND, and mentally healthy workplaces with wellbeing at their heart. And because I'm a Senko, and I've been Senkoing for quite a number of years now, and I've seen things from a leadership perspective when I was in a senior leadership position, and also, I've been on the ground as a class teacher, of course. So I've been seeing these things from all angles, which gives me a nice overview of how schools do things well and how schools don't do things well. So out of the 8 schools I've worked in, I think it's about 50-50 split as to what sort of experience I've had. So all that experience has added to my ability to support other people, particularly the bad ones. And we all know, of course, that happy staff equal happy children, and that means good or better outcomes either way. So moving on then to our SLT considerations, and broadly speaking, SLT kind of falls into 4-ish categories. So you might recognise elements of your SLT members in here. So first of all, we've got the inclusion guru, and these head teachers or leaders understand inclusion, SEND really well. They might be a Senko themselves. They're very knowledgeable and helpful with SEND, and they've got joined up thinking with whole school initiatives, and it's pushed from the top, and you've got your whole SLT on board, which is absolutely fantastic. Although the other side of it can be a little bit overwhelming because your to-do list is really long. You sometimes get a bit micromanaged and directed to do things. But yeah, definitely the inclusion guru leader is a really good one to have on your side. And then we haven't got a Scooby-Doo leader, hasn't got any idea about anything special needs related, but quite often these leaders are quite happy for you to lead them on things, quite happy to listen to you, quite happy to admit they don't know anything either. But sometimes they need a little bit of a shove because they don't often have SEND at the forefront of their thinking, and they're not that hot on whole school inclusion. So they need an awful lot of guidance. We've got the traditionalist, so they're quite old-fashioned in their thinking. I mean, I don't think they quite remember the cane, but it's that sort of style of leadership, just in terms of the iron rod approach, perhaps. So I can't think of any particularly good points here, unless they're probably a very nice people either way. But sometimes they don't have a very modern way of thinking in terms of what is needed for inclusion these days. And we've got the egotists, so they think they understand everything very well, not just SEN. They think they're the bee's knees of every aspect of school leadership, and actually don't really have much idea at all. And I feel that this is the worst kind of leader because there's no telling them. And your school might be a dictatorship in other areas as well. They just don't listen to feedback. So if you're working in a school under one of these people, it might be time for a rethink. So, of course, there's lots of barriers to SLT engagement with SEND. We've got, first of all, there's a lack of awareness and understanding. And, this is not head teachers' fault generally, because some head teachers, they have limited knowledge to start with. They haven't gone through an education route where they've needed to have much knowledge of SEND, and they haven't come across specific students with specific needs. And perhaps they've come from a quiet village school into a slightly more cosmopolitan school, who knows? So sometimes they don't really know very much, and they haven't had much education and learning on their journey into leadership. Of course, that goes hand in hand with limited CPD opportunities, not a lot of time. Even in teacher training these days, it's quite difficult to get really, really robust SEND inclusion information and training. So that can be quite a challenge as well. And that kind of filters all the way up to leadership. Of course, there's no time, competing priorities, and sometimes there's just a sticking plaster approach rather than thinking about what can be embedded underneath that or to support inclusion in the school, which would in turn support everybody in moving forward. So sometimes it's kind of an Ofsted panic, particularly if you're in that window, which it shouldn't be, because it should be all about the children, not about the tick boxes on an Ofsted form. Financial constraints at all, of course, and we're all trying to work miracles with very little resources. And I think sometimes Senkos are very good at fighting their corner, but I think if we knew all the balancing that our leaders had to do in their heads all the time, then I don't know, some of them don't sleep at night because of the worry of the finances and things, and more schools are going into deficit budgets, and LAs are suggesting that if you've got no money for SEND, then yes, you should go into a deficit budget and then let the LA sort it out. So there's lots and lots of things at play here in terms of finances. So consider that perhaps inclusion is a luxury rather than something that everybody is entitled to. So there might be some inadequate support structures. So there might be no structures within school, particularly in schools where you suddenly get one pupil who is extremely high needs, and the school was not used to that. So this kind of hinders staff with their engagement in inclusion generally. So just then need to refer back to the code of practice to work out what support structures need to go in place and who is responsible for what. Challenges in collaboration and coordination. So we've got effective engagement with SEND often requires a lot of collaborating among various stakeholders, including teachers, parents, agencies, etc. There's lots of difficulty sometimes in establishing and maintaining these partnerships, and this can impede head teacher engagement in this area. Getting those parents on side in challenging circumstances is no easy thing. There's also, of course, as I said, pressure to achieve those academic outcomes, and they sometimes, head teachers and leaders, prioritise the academics rather than the inclusion of the children who might be at the other end of the academic scale and who we want to reach their potential rather than necessarily getting ARE in the SATs. So again, this kind of tunnel visions leaders and diverts attention and resources away from inclusive strategies. However, I think more and more it's coming into to be completely obvious that inclusion is at the heart of everything we do, and if we put good inclusive practices in, then that's better for everybody. But addressing these barriers can be a challenge. Of course, your leadership team might also be controlled by a higher power. If you're in a MAT, for example, there's lots of upper layers of management. Sometimes they sit in their ivory tower, have no idea what it's like on the ground, dictate all this rubbish that you have to suck up and get on with. And it's sometimes very difficult to be aligned with leadership like that. And of course, you've got the head who will bend to parental whims, and rather than have a fair system across everybody, it can be a little bit awkward sometimes if a head's made a decision and you're like, oh, not really sure about that one. But you kind of have to take the school stance on things as well. So, addressing these barriers really requires a multifaceted approach, targeted professional development, adequate resources, support structures, etc., a whole school commitment as well. And this is really crucial to promote awareness, and training opportunities are really important as well. But this is easier said than done. Sometimes you do need to reflect as a SENCO, as many people on the group have reflected recently about whether you're flogging a dead horse, so to speak. So, is it your establishment? Is it going to get better? Can you influence it to get better? And if the answer is generally no, then is it time for a rethink? And of course, if you're not the head teacher, there's lots of massive challenges. How to get them on side in an ideal world without these challenges. So raising awareness and understanding are, of course, very important, and just letting them know how important SEND is, providing information, research, case studies, etc. Demonstrate the benefits of inclusive education where you can, and the value of supporting people with SEND needs. I mean, obviously, this is on top of your normal workload, so that can be quite difficult to fit in, but, it's a means to an end. So actually putting all this work in a little bit sooner hopefully would alleviate things further down the line. Again, professional development and training offer targeted professional development and training opportunities for school leaders to enhance their knowledge and skills, or signpost them as to where they can find it. Creating a shared vision, so all sitting down together, the classic big bit of flip chart paper to actually create a shared vision of ownership and commitment towards inclusive practice, really important. And in the same vein as that, developing those inclusive policies and procedures as well in order to include everybody. Allocating resources effectively and making sure that you as a SENCO have a part in that is really important, because I've worked in schools before where the head has ownership of that and doesn't really share it, and puts LSAs with people that he thinks is okay, and then I come in and go, oh, have you thought about this people that's going into that class and what they need? And they're like, oh no, I didn't think about that. So if you can support each other to do the staffing at the end of the year, ready for September, or any changes around, and if it's a joint decision, at least you can see very clearly, even though it's not ideal, you've had a part of the process in order to understand why the decision was made, which is kind of a better way, because then you can explain that to staff more easily as well. And of course, foster collaboration and teamwork, really important, encouraging collaboration among leaders and staff and parents and external agencies, so that everybody with SEND is included, and lots of regular communication as well, and sharing best practices and network meetings, just like we do in the group, really. Lots of community-minded people. Of course, these are massive challenges, and everything needs to come from the top down to be properly embedded. And there's so many SENCOs in a school who feel like they're banging their head against the wall a little bit. So it's a little bit depressing for them. And but hopefully, thinking about your circle of control and your circle of influence, and where you cannot influence anything, even if you did one of those for this situation, just concentrate the things that are in your influence and in your control in order to make some positive changes. So anything else that you can try? So these are my kind of strategies that have worked in the past. So drip feed things. So trying to step by step, every time you see your leader, mention things that, you'll end up really irritating them on occasion. But, sometimes they just cave in eventually if you don't get what you want. Just keep going with it and drip feed all that positive information about SEND as well, just to change the mindsets a little bit. Asking professionals to suggest whole school training when they visit as well. So get your LA involved, maybe volunteer for an LA review, for example, and get them to come and say what is good about the school and what needs work on, just in terms of inclusion, because quite often SENCOs and LAs are pretty much aligned, although you don't agree on things all the time, particularly when it comes to EHCP funding and paperwork. However, I would say that most LAs and most SENCOs can align on inclusive practices, because we all want the best for the children in our care, and perhaps an LA report will support the head teacher into rethinking what they need to do just for the school to improve. And I've never usually say this, but using Ofsted as a carrot is a good one. I don't believe in much of what Ofsted stands for, but I do feel that more recently, the inclusive practices side of things has been really helpful, because actually Ofsted want to check that inclusion is interweaved into your classrooms. They want to check that individuals are catered for effectively, and that is a positive. Keep dropping in best practice, evidence and current research into conversations wherever you can. Suggest leadership SEND training as well. So there's lots of it around, but that's sort of just on for leaders. I'm hoping to develop something myself in the future as well. Make an effort to build relationships, even if leaders are a challenge, just like you would with a pupil. So find out what your school leaders like and their hobbies, and then drop that into conversations and sort of getting round them in that way. And yeah, just finding out what they're interested in, etc. And you know, and just like with the people, you might make them an activity sheet based around Paw Patrol. So perhaps your head teacher's got something similar that they'd like to talk about. So yeah, translate those skills into other areas. Get other staff on side to help, because no doubt you've got many staff in school who have got very good inclusive practices. Perhaps make sure you've got a staff meeting every half term where good practice can be shared. And also parental surveys are very powerful to ascertain how to get around support SEND issues and to get parents' actual opinions. Of course, the most annoying parents are the ones who stay anonymous and then slate you. You're in every school, regardless of how amazing you are. And yeah, and of course, you can't address it very well if they stay anonymous, which is a little bit of a challenge, but parental surveys can be quite powerful tools. If you look on my website, there is a parental survey on there that I can let you have access to, that you can then copy and use for your setting, which is on a Google form, which is much easier for the analysis side of things. And I made this resource for teacher toolkit, and it's about SEND for leaders. So you can send your leaders there to download that one. So I've just put a few things together that would really support SENCOs in this line of work. So it's kind of what you would say to your school leader if you could say anything at all to support you in your role. So it's all about checking out the research of Bath University for best practice, making sure that you've got a seat at that SLT table, you know, even if it's just at the start of the meeting, joined up thinking when it comes with staff targets and teaching and learning development, working with SENCO on your pupil progress, just making sure that the tracking systems are fit for purpose. And also wider school community, just checking that your SENCO is known by the wider school community and everyone's clear what they do, big them up at every opportunity, basically. Make sure that high quality teaching supports all learners, that universal provision or ordinarily available is in place in school, supporting SENCO with their training needs as well. And having SEMH needs at the heart of your curriculum and interweaving it into everything you do. Get an admin assistant for your SENCO, because they will love you forever if you do that. And of course, many SENCOs feel that SLT have no idea what they do. So show an interest in your SENCO. So it can work both ways, can't it? Find out your SENCO's hobby and perhaps talk to them about that if a relationship is a bit of a challenge. So these things can work both ways. So of course, if these things are in place, then you'd be one big happy school family and you'd be a very happy SENCO. But until that point, it is a little bit of kind of drip feeding bit by bit and developing those structures and strategies yourself. And these are really good leadership strategies anyway. So whatever promotion you decide to go for next, for example, or if you stay SENCOing or if you do something else, then, you know, these are really good ways in order to work collaboratively with people generally. So they are transferable skills, which is great. Right, so there we go. That was a quick one, wasn't it? So just at the end here, just to say that I'm available to do support packages for schools and maths, and there is currently a discount until the end of October using the Sweary SENCO code for an extra £10 off in my shop. And within that, you get CPD sessions over the year, so 6 times 45 minutes. All my SENCO webinars are included as well, and I'm growing that gradually. And also there's ongoing support, so you can obviously PM me whenever you like with any ideas or any requests, etc., and access to my growing collection of resources as well. And hopefully you feel that that you can get on with me well, and we can build good relationships as well, because there's nothing I like better than supporting Senkos in their challenging roles. So if you're interested, just have a little look, maybe scan the QR code to find a little bit more about it. And a couple of things that I do, particularly in Essex as well, because it's much easier to get into schools for me in Essex and more locally. So I've been into schools to look at nurture provision, I've provided coaching, I supported pupils with SLCN, etc. Lots of training, a few school development things as well. So just let me know what you need and I'll see what I can do. And feel free to ask for a Zoom chat as well, because I'm happy to jump on a Zoom and have a chat to you about anything that needs troubleshooting also. And I've also been doing some interview sessions to practice interviews for other roles. So if you decide that your school is not for you because all these challenges are a little bit too much for you, and perhaps you need some interview coaching, then please let me know if I can help that as well. There we go. Thank you for coming. Please let me know if you've got any other session ideas as well. And if you want to stay on at the end for some question and answers, then you are very welcome.